Well, hello, I'm Chris, and this is my Tamiya DT-02 chassis assembly video. I bought this used Holiday Buggy re-release from 2010, and I took it all apart to go through it. So we're going to show every part of the build, but we're going to slow down on important things for new builders, and maybe you haven't built too many of them. I just washed everything in alcohol. It looks like they ran this thing for like a minute. So if you're building Tamiyas, they kind of have special screws, so get you their tools. It's going to make building these so much easier. So we have step one right here. It doesn't say anything about greasing these parts, but I think you should grease these pins. All right, pay attention to the orientation. Okay, and then just screw it down until it stops and just barely snug it up. Good. Double check that you're in the right direction. Look for small things, that there is a top and a bottom, even though they look like it doesn't matter. All this in the correct orientation. So once again, the instructions don't say anything about greasing these parts, but I highly recommend that you do. So on the uprights, I like to put grease where it comes in contact right there. Remember, do not over tighten these, just snug them up. They set themselves. Beautiful. Make sure that's loose. Perfect. So always pay attention to what needs to be greased. We don't have to grease this right here. You can if you want to. This needs the grease on the inside. This is what's going to be taking all the wear riding up and down on that screw. So once again, just snug them up. Do not over tighten any of this stuff. Check the movement. Everything moves free. Good to go. So then you're going to flip it up, and then once this guard piece on the bottom, you can't mess it up. It's going to use the two outside holes. Gently snug it up. There's nothing worse than when you strip a Tamiya screw and it keeps spinning. So to build a differential, you're going to be putting a lot of grease on these parts. Your hands are going to get all greasy, so be ready. So you have to do this right. We want grease where metal touches metal. You have to do this. Just get it in all the gaps at first. So you might have to play around with it and watch exactly where this is riding. As you can see, we need to put grease all over it. Pop it back out. Do we need more right there? Maybe. Good. So we need grease on those teeth. And drop that in there like that. More grease. So depending on what you're going to do with your car, some people might want to put more grease than that. That is plenty for me. So you might want to snug these up just a hair more. So if you want to test the differential, stick the shafts in there. They should both spin freely. Hold the shafts and try to spin the wheel, and it'll be locked. So this is good. So we have the BA11 bushings. If you can, get you ball bearings. They're only about $12 to $15. So the ball bearings, you don't grease the outside. Just push them in there like that. So if you're using bushings, you grease the shaft. If you're using bearings, you do not grease the shaft. Spin it. Beautiful. Ball bearing, you do want to put grease on the gears. So it'll work itself where it needs to go. Just make sure you put some grease on there. Go ahead and screw the case together. So spur gear, ball bearings. So we do want grease on the gear. Put that in there, shaft the bottom out, spin it. Feels perfect. So we're going to be doing speed runs. We're starting off with a torque tune 540 motor. Get your motor plate. This protects the inside of the motor from grease and stuff. So you have 17 tooth pinion, 19 tooth pinion. We're going to use the 19 tooth, the 08 thread pitch. You have a flat side on the shaft. Make sure your grub screw is on the flat side of the shaft. We're installing the pinion this way. So just make sure the pinion is spaced off of the motor a little bit. So 540 motor, 19 tooth pinion, perfect gear mesh. Put some grease on it. So just make sure that grub screw is on the pinion. You may have to space it kind of close to the motor like that, but everything looks good. So all this is ready to go, greased up. Put the cover on. Okay. Yeah, he stripped that one right there. So then we have these little axle pieces. Stick them in both sides. Give everything a spin. Everything feels good. You can move on. So the rear control arms, we're going to grease everything up just like we did the front. Let me get those on there. Put a little grease in there where it's going to come in contact. Okay, so you don't grease any of this. If you're using the ball bearings, just stick that in there, ready to go. We're getting ready to put these in there. We're going to grease all the screws. Remember to stick this in there. You don't really grease this. You can if you want to, but it's just going to get all dirty. So I am not going to grease this. All right, make sure everything moves free. Good. Okay, so for the shocks and dampers, you're going to cut these 16 millimeter for the front, 26 millimeter on the back. All right, so you're going to get the screw, put it in there like that. The front spring. And then this piece, you're going to screw it down all the way until it snugs up. Sometimes they're easy to screw in, sometimes they're hard, but what is important is they're both even. So the screw head is going to go through the rubber piece and give it sort of a feel like an oil-filled shock, so you want to put some grease on this. The instructions show putting it on the outside, but I think it needs to go on the inside. I mean, I'm just going to put it on both sides. I don't see why it would hurt anything. Make sure this is in the right orientation. And you're going to screw that down. All right, rear shocks are ready. You can put a little grease on these screws if you want to, so it's not dry. You're going to go in the outside hole. So the rear axle, take this piece and it screws right there, and then it attaches to the outside hole. Alright, so that was strip 2. That feels good. Just look at it, make sure everything looks even. That's ready to go. So for the front springs, it wants them mounted in this direction. We're going to go to the inside hole, and it wants this little brass bushing with grease on it. Then we got to get it down in there to the inside hole. You don't have to grease this. Go through the movement, everything feels good. So on the chassis, we have the pieces that hold the battery down. So on the servo saver, using the top and outer holes, you're gonna have to get these little bitty ball studs in there. So you have to get these little tiny lock nuts on there. On the wrench, there should be a place for that little nut. So that's a servo that I'm using. Get your servo saver together. I don't think they had this zeroed out right. All the screws to mount the servo at once washers on them. So then the little tie rod end pieces, the short one on the driver's side. So it's giving you 52 to start with. Look at that, I nailed it just by eyeballing it. And then 75 on this one. All right, come on, did I get it? Ooh, not so good. Okay, short one on the driver's side. You may need some pliers. The instructions said something about putting a piece of foamy tape, spongy tape right there. I'm not sure for what. I'm not going to put it on there. Dang, they almost stripped that one. So now it's using a different type of screws to mount the front piece on. So just make sure the two ends are 90 degrees opposed from each other, and then just snap those in. All right, so now it makes sense why so many people have screwed up alignment on their RC cars, because the measurement it's giving you is toe out. You need even or a little bit of toe in. So we'll do an alignment on it later. All right, so then it has this little hold down brace. Very cool. Nice. So then for the rear axle, we have 4 on the bottom and 2 screws right here. Don't forget these 2. So then it wants a washer on the body mount right here. For the Holiday Buggy, you got this mount right here. You're gonna use these long screws. Let's make sure we have it on there right. Nice. So this is the ESC we're gonna be running. So the instructions give you a real good idea on where to mount everything and the way to route all the wires. We have an on and off switch. We are gonna install it. And you get the little pin. Make sure it's horizontal so it won't drop out. And you put your little wheel adapter on there. And the wheel just goes on there, and you bolt the nut down. Just hold the wheel, tighten them up, done. On the front wheel, if you're using ball bearings, you don't grease anything. Stick the bearings in there, snug them up, and it should spin like that. Awesome. So everything is built 100% correct. Everything looks right. Everything feels right. Just wanted to share with you in case you're scared, never done one before. So $15, add the ball bearings if you can. Everything on here went together perfect. It looks perfect, feels perfect. So I bought this Holiday Buggy used, took it all apart, cleaned it up. Let's just make sure the body fits. I'm currently painting all the stuff. They didn't paint any of it. They just put it on there white. So the lesson in this video, if you buy a used one, you might as well go in and take it all apart and clean it. This person did not grease anything on the whole car. Now we have our chassis ready to go. We're going to be doing speed runs with the torque tune motor first, and the Titan, and a cheap brushless motor, 2S and 3S. And hopefully we won't destroy this one. This is replacing the Grasshopper. As of now, that thing got destroyed and is retired officially. All right, so now you got an idea on your DT-02, DT-03. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.